mean, if you think about it, what drives people to break the law? It's usually desperation. Like if you're trying to like get food for your children or whatever. So like you're in a dire situation where you're desperate, and desperation is what drives people to make certain choices. So it's like before we judge people as to like, oh, why did they cross the border or why did they come undocumented, it's like listen to their story.
Hey, welcome to Meet Me at the Spot, where pleasure meets education. This is the space where we get real about sex, relationships, and everything in between. I'm your host, Holly Eckelberger, and I'm a longtime sexual health educator, activist, and content creator. I will be your guide through conversations that blend curiosity, pleasure, and truth. Together with some amazing guests, we'll break down stigma, celebrate bodies, and learn how to embrace sexual health with confidence and joy. So get comfy because it's time for the show to get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Meet Me at the Spot, where pleasure meets education. I'm your host, Holly, and this week I am so excited to share my conversation with Heidy De La Cruz. So Heidy De La Cruz, who uses she, her pronouns, is a podcaster, speaker, and podcast launch coach. Heidy is the host of the two-time award-winning podcast, The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants, where immigrants share their journey of coming to the United States. Immigration is a very important topic for me, especially thinking about reproductive justice. The three main tenets of the reproductive justice framework are the right to have children when you want to have children, to not have children if you don't want to have them, and to raise children in safe and supportive neighborhoods. Heidy and I recorded this podcast episode back in the beginning of December, and it was an important conversation, and it feels like an even more important conversation today with everything going on in the United States around immigration and folks not feeling safe in their own neighborhoods. This is a growing problem that we need to talk about. And I hope that you will gain from this conversation some things to think about as you continue to support and love and care for your neighbors and the communities in which you live, work, and play. Make sure you check out, subscribe to, and show all of the love to Heidy's podcast, The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants as well. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Heidy. Welcome, Heidy, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Holly, and inviting me on. It's such an honor. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So I always like to start asking my guests, because I'm nosy. That's why I started a podcast and started interviewing guests. What got you started in doing your podcast and all of the amazing stuff that you do as a podcaster, as a podcasting coach, all that great stuff. What kind of got you started into that work?
Well, I'm actually a pretty nosy person too. That's probably why I got into podcasting myself. But no, I say a curious person is usually what I say, but pretty nosy too, yeah, for sure. But no, the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants got started pretty much from my parents' immigration story. So, but I was a fan of podcasts way before I started my podcast. But then I realized that like the podcasts that I like listening to were all story based or like interview based, where like people are sharing their story, and I just feel like you learn so much from people's stories, and that's why I like listening to those type of podcasts. But also like even when I was like reading books, I'm usually reading memoirs or like nonfiction books, and just learning from people's stories. And it was in 2019. I had been listening to podcasts for a while now. And I was like, man, I want to share people's stories. But I didn't know what stories I was actually going to share at that time. And then fast forward to 2022, when I actually launched my podcast, it was towards the end of my maternity leave, which is so crazy to think about. My son was literally 3 months old. And I was like, okay, well, I have time now to like research how to start a podcast. So I literally Googling how to start a podcast. Found out all the different pieces that you needed, like recording equipment, hosting, all that. And then once it finally came part to like, okay, what stories do I want to share? I actually came across an article on Medium, and it was an immigrant, and it was an immigrant story of the cultural shocks that she experienced here in the United States, like her first few years. And reading that article, it just brought me back so many memories of like listening to my parents talk about, their home country, the Dominican Republic, like living back home versus here, their friends and things like that. And so I then went to my husband, who's also an immigrant. He also came from the Dominican Republic at 9. I asked him about his story. I was like, like we've been together for a while. I know you're an immigrant, but like, how was that experience for you? And so as he's telling me his story of the perspective of a 9-year-old, I was like, okay, like this is what I want to share on the podcast. This is the type of stories that I want to share. And so then did more research on like, okay, what do I want to name this podcast? And the American Dream and the Eyes of Immigrants came from like, I feel like the United States has always been marketed as like the country of the American dream or the opportunities. And immigrants are they either choose to come here or they're forced to come here. And so I'm just like, we all have the American dream, whether you're born here or not. But it's like, what is that American dream for immigrants who either chose to come to this country or were forced to come? And so that's where the name come from. And yeah, so I started with friends and family. Again, just always been surrounded by immigrants, and just asking them like who's brave enough to share their immigration story, because I have had family members that told me, no, that's okay, I don't want to put myself out there like that right now. It's like, okay, that's fine. But yes, literally started friends and family. And then once I posted it and started going on Facebook groups for podcasters to try to find guests, it's just been like people referring other people or hearing about it online and then pitching themselves to be on the podcast or going to networking events and just meeting either immigrants themselves or children of immigrants, like myself. Just growing up with immigrant parents, it's a different experience than when your parents are born here. So like, for example, like my daughter, since I was born here, she doesn't have to translate for me. But for like my parents, I'm still translating for them sometimes. Or like still like my dad will be like, hey, can you call this number or can you call this place? And I'm like, Father, English, you can, kind of thing. I was like, English, you can do this. So that is the very long answer of how my podcast got started.
I love that so much. No, it is such a cool perspective to hear so many different stories. Because, and I have to imagine from your experience, nobody has the same story, right? Like nobody has the same immigration story. Everybody's story
No.
is so
No.
unique and so different, right? Yeah. And it's so great, I'm sure, for you as a podcaster, 'cause like I know for me, like talking with guests and having guests on has been the greatest thing I ever did for my show. Mostly because I don't have to do all of this like prep work to like script a show, which is like a lot in its own. It's like, yeah, I have a lot to say, and I can talk about a lot of things, but I don't know all of the things. And even the things I do know a lot about, there's so many other people who know more or know about it in a different way.
Yes, I love
right?
that. Yes.
I'm like,
Yes.
I've been doing this work for a long time as like a sexual health educator, but I worked with teens for a long time, and we weren't allowed to talk about a lot of stuff that that I've always wanted to talk about and things like that. So I'm like, I don't know all the ins and outs of a lot of stuff. So that's where I'm very fortunate in that. And naming your podcast, I thought that was like the hardest thing. I'm like, it has to be cool. It has to be catchy. It has to be something that nobody has already, right? Like it can't be a thing that already exists. And so it's so hard to name your podcast, but I love how you explained how you came up with the name, The American Dream in the Eyes of the Immigrant. Yeah. It's so good.
Thank you for that, because when I named it, I was like, man, this is really long. And like, I even thought about like shortening it. But then I'm like, but that is literally the essence of the podcast, the American dreams through the eyes of immigrants. And it's just like, You know, it's just, I mean, it's 3 years in, almost 4 years, so it's just stuck around, and you know, that's the name.
Yeah, I actually just lengthened mine, so don't feel bad. I just made mine longer.
Well, I actually learned that the longer that it is, it's actually better for SEO, so for discoverability.
Apparently,
So there you go. Yeah.
yeah, no, I had a whole like podcast audit, which was really great and eye-opening for me to like learn about like how my podcast like gets viewed out in the world. And they're like, you
Yeah.
should probably change the name. And I talked to one of my best friends who was my first guest ever on my show. She's like my ride or die kind of person, and I was like,
Mhm.
girl, I need your opinion. This lady told me I should change my name and I don't want to because I love it. And I was like, but I was thinking
Mhm.
about like adding kind of like a tagline a little bit to kind of bring it together. And she's like, don't rename your podcast. Like, that's your baby. Like, you worked so hard
Yeah.
to come up with that name, and it's meaningful to you. Even if it's not making the connection for people, then add that tagline so it makes that connection. I was like,
Yeah.
genius. I'm like, I'm not changing my name. I'm sorry. I'm so tied to it. I can't do it. I'm not
Yeah.
ready. I worked
It's
so hard for
hard. It's hard.
it.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, it's so funny. So tell me a little bit about like I'm gonna come back to some of like the podcasting stuff, but I'm always curious
Yeah.
about like I know you do some like podcast coaching and things like that for folks too. If you could like talk a little bit about what that looks like for you, kind of where that got started, what that kind of looks like, and what you do for
Yeah.
folks who are looking to do what
For
we do.
sure. Yes. So it really started from my own podcasting journey. I think once you start a podcast, you know, you really connect with other podcasters. You really get involved in the industry and things like that. And then you see like other people online who like want to start a podcast or like in these Facebook groups, right? They're always asking questions. And one of the things that I saw a lot in the Facebook groups was that people were very overwhelmed in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because even from my own journey, when I was Googling how to start a podcast, there's so much out there, so many articles and so many things. But one thing that I didn't see was just like, what do you do first?
Mm-hmm.
But there really isn't like a first, second, or third step because it's like, you know, as a podcast, like there really
Yeah.
isn't like you need to do this first and then do like you don't. You can start with your cover art, or you can start with outlining your episodes. You could start with finding, you know, like there's so many different ways to start. So I saw that a lot of people were overwhelmed in the beginning, and it was like, I've been there, I get it. And so me coaching others just literally came from a serving heart in me helping others, because I was like, I'm having so much fun doing this. I absolutely love talking to people, conversating with them, learning from them. And then it's like, if somebody else wants to start a podcast, I want to be the person that I needed in the beginning. I want to help them to do what I do because it's just so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I got was into this podcasting thing, I was like, I realized like the so much opportunities that you have as a podcaster, right? Either you make your own opportunities or just opportunities come to you. And so like I was like, I want to help others. So what I did was just like really sit down and was like, okay, if I were to start a podcast today, how would I start? Knowing what I know now, how would I actually start a podcast? So I reverse engineered the steps, and so I came up with the voice method is what it's called, podcast launch. So each letter, you know, represents a step within launching your podcast. So like V is for like your vision. What is your vision with your podcast? O is like your outline. How are you going to do your episodes? Are you going to do solo episodes? Are you going to do interviews? The I is the implementation. So that's when you start getting your equipment that you need. If you want to invest in the beginning on equipment. And then like the C is like the connection. Okay, so how are you going to connect with people? How are you going to market your podcast, and how are you going to, you know, connect with your audience? And then E is obviously the execution, and it's like, okay, you're finally publishing, how often are you publishing, and things like that. So the voice method is literally a 6-week process on helping you launch your podcast, breaking the process down into manageable steps so you're not feeling overwhelmed. So that is the main point of it. And so yeah, just me, I just love helping people. I love sharing my knowledge. I love sharing what I've learned. I've always tried to not be a gatekeeper, because I'm like, we can all win. There's no need to gatekeep. If something has worked for you, tell people. It can work for somebody else, or it may not. like, but I don't see the need in gatekeeping information. So that's how I became a podcast launch coach. And then I, started creating digital products to help people. And so that has also helped, offset the cost of producing my first podcast, The American Dream and the Eyes of Immigrants. So I did it also for that too, because it's like, you have to invest money to produce the podcast, time and money. And so I'm like, okay, the coaching will help offset that cost. I do have a 9 to 5, but obviously that's, take care of the household and things like that. So it's just like, how can I, offset the cost and help others? And then that brought me to my second podcast about podcasting, podcasting for Latina CEOs. And that's really the podcast where I share all my podcasting tips, experience, knowledge, and everything. Because obviously, I can't do that on my first podcast because that's just immigration stories and interview based. So the solo podcast, again, I have so much fun doing that as well. And I can't say if I like one more over the other because again, I really like connecting with people, but then I really like sharing my experience too. So I get the best of both worlds with both of the podcasts.
I won't make you pick between your two children. Which one's your favorite?
Oh, that was so good. That is so true.
No worries. I won't do that. No, I think that is so helpful because, a lot of folks who listen to podcasts but don't have their own podcasts don't realize all of the things. I mean, I didn't know all the things when I had that ADHD moment where I'm like, I'm going to actually do it. I'm going to start a podcast. And then immediately was like, what the hell do I need to start a podcast? Right?
Yes.
Like, what? What?
Oh, what the hell did I get myself into?
For a long time, I held my own self back because I was like, I don't have anything to offer that other people probably already don't have out there. And there's other sexual health podcasts out there. There's people talking about the same stuff. And then I finally got to the point where I'm like, yeah, but nobody's talking about it from my viewpoint. Nobody's talking about it the way I'm talking about it and the way I want to talk about it. And like the greatest thing I think for me, and I hope you have the same experience, is like the podcasting world is very cool. Like podcasters, like,
oh my gosh, cool. Yes. So supportive. They're like the best people ever. But I also feel like it's because we know the hard work behind running a show. So it's like, we know how hard I know how hard it is for you because I go through it too. So it's like, of course I'm going to support you because this shit is hard, Yeah, absolutely. No, I've had a few times where I've interviewed a guest who is in the sexual health world. And then like either at the end while recording or after we're done recording, they're like, I've been thinking about starting a podcast. Like, can you give me some tips? Like, and I tell people that, like, wait, that's like your competition. I was like, it's not though, because, and not to say that in a mean way, like, that's not my competition, but it's like, no, that is another friend who is doing their own thing in the podcasting world. That's another person I can support and that I know supports me. And so, like, it's never been like a competition kind of thing, or that we're, you got to listen to her or me. You got to pick. Like, no, listen to all of us because, you can listen to the same like types of podcasts and get very different things from them. It's something I've always really loved, but I love that you took your experience and you're like, you know what? This doesn't have to be hard for everybody. Why don't I make it into this? And also help me generate some income because yes, even if you run a podcast listen, bare minimum, I posted a genuine post. Like, one day I want to have like a small team, like running my brand, running my podcast, and it'll be so much fun and I can't wait. And so many people are like, I'd love to help you. And I was like, oh, you sweet, beautiful children. I make $0.00. I will never use somebody's labor for free. Wishful thinking, like, ever. Like, this is for the out there. It's like I'm putting it out there, but for years down the road, and you'll get there for sure. But it takes a while. It's a grind. That's what people don't understand.
No. And a lot of people who are making money on podcasts are people who have who already started with followings and big social media followings or some kind of status of some sort, like celebrity status or whatever. Like the average person podcasting is losing money on hosting a podcast. But
and then
so
if they do make it, because I think it was Diary of a CEO now that he like, but he's been doing it for so long. He's been doing it for over 10 years now. So that's the thing that people don't understand either. It's like these quote unquote overnight successes literally have been grinding for 10 years. And then now is when you're hearing about them because they kept going. And that's the thing. People don't keep going because they don't get that what they think is that instant overnight success. And that's the thing with podcasting. I just saw a friend tagged me on Threads. Somebody had just started their podcast and he was already worried about downloads. Like he literally just launched and he's like, how do I get more downloads? And so somebody tagged me and it's just like, you just started. Like you gotta get your reps in. Like you gotta keep going. Like what you don't start off with 1,000 downloads, each like on the very first episode. No, you gotta put your reps. You still got 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Bro.
Is this the guy? I think I might have seen this post on Threads. Was he like, I just posted my first episode?
Yes.
How do I get more downloads? Yeah, I just saw this yesterday.
Yes.
I was like,
you need 5 years. Let's talk in 5 years. You
I'm
got
3
time,
years
bro.
in, and I'm like, I couldn't even tell you how many downloads I have.
You're
I have
3
no
years
idea.
in?
I don't even. I'll be 3 years.
I don't
in
even
February.
focus on that.
I don't even know. I don't focus on all that
nice.
mess. I just do it because I love it, and it makes me happy, and it brings me joy, and I hope that it brings other people joy too. And teach. Somebody gets one little nugget out of it. But I think the hardest lesson for me to learn was my immediate friends and family, especially my family. They are not my target audience because it kind of hurt my feelings a little bit when they did not ever listen to my podcast. Like my own spouse does not listen to my podcast, y'all. And I was like, why don't you all love me? But because they're not my target audience, right? Like they're not the audience that wants to, because they don't need sex education. They have me in their lives all day long. Like I'm their 24/7. So, but if there's like a good episode, I'll tell them like, you guys gotta listen to this episode. But I mean, my sister was a guest on one of my episodes, so that was really impressive for me, and it was so huge because she shared about her abortion story, which she had never told any of us before. She reached out and said, I want to come on your podcast. I want to talk about something, and I'm not going to tell you what it is until we record. And I was like, I was freaking out. I was like, oh, okay, I don't know how to handle this as like a slight micromanager. What? I had no idea, zero idea that was going to come out of her mouth. And it was one of the most empowering things. And it really opened up a lot of conversations within our own family about that. Like she didn't ever tell my mom, any of us, like even knowing the work that I do. And I was like, I don't even know how to ask. Okay, hold on. I don't know what questions to ask.
That was a lot to process in real time. Oh my God.
It was wild. But I was so proud of her because she's like the quiet sister. She's the only person in our family who's not a Leo. So she's so quiet and real reserved. So for her to like say, not like, hey, Hal, I want to have coffee and I want to tell you this thing. It was like, hey, I want to come on your podcast and share with the world. Like, this is what happened. And just to have a platform for people to do that that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me going at this every day. And I'm so glad that you help other people in that way, to do that too, and to be part of this community, because it's really cool. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, do it, because it's so fun.
Yeah, every single time I see somebody on Thursday, it's like, oh, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. Yes, do it. Do it. Let me know what questions you have, because it's literally so much fun. Like you said, it is a lot of work, but just like connecting with other people, it's really, really awesome. And I love that we have this medium to be able to connect with people this way, virtually or even in person, and have people listen to you like literally all over the world. It's crazy.
It's so wild. So wild. It's very cool. Just living our dream out here. All right, so I want to switch gears kind of back a little bit. So,
Mhm.
so for folks listening, we kind of talked a little bit before I hit record, but this was super important for me to have you on. Not only because you're just so awesome and so cool, but
Oh,
because you do talk about a topic that is, I think, extremely, extremely important, especially right now in the United States, and globally, but right here in the United States, it's very, very important around immigration. Um,
yeah.
and things are changing every day. We're recording this podcast in the beginning of December. By the time this comes out, God only knows, unfortunately, what will
Yeah.
be happening in our country. I hate having to record podcasts and be like, everything could be so different by the time this comes out. And but
Yeah.
we have to like exist in the reality that we're in, right? And just kind of move
Yeah.
in the reality that we're in a little bit for right now. Um,
Hmm.
but I'm curious, with the stories that you're hearing, with the guests that you're talking to, if you wouldn't mind sharing like a little bit of kind of, what you're hearing from folks. And I'm sure
Yeah.
folks are reaching out to you and folks within your own family and community, around, what's going on in our country.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So, e- you talking about how, saying the words like at the time of this recording, this is what's going on. Who knows? Well, literally, that's been this whole year because
Hmm.
I am months out.
Hmm.
Fortunately and unfortunately, because it overwhelms me a little bit sometimes. I record months out just because of the people who are willing, the brave. I always say the brave souls who are willing to share their immigration story. So it's just like, yeah, we're like, okay, this is what's going on at this time. Once this episode's out, we'll see where we're at. And literally, this whole year, that's how it's been. And one of the questions that I ask all my guests at the end of the episode is, what does the American dream mean to you, given the name of the podcast, but also because it's very personal. Everybody has their own American dream, and it's been a hard question to answer this year. And but I will say that opportunities is a word that continues to come up. They're just very thankful for the opportunities that this country does provide, and there's still hope within those answers, which gives me hope. And having them thank me for the safe space to share their immigration story, which a lot of them, it's the first time they're telling that story. you know, Within us, we have various different stories, right? Um, for example, I've been divorced before, so that's one part of my story. But the immigration part of their story is, it's, yeah, a lot of them, it's the first time that they're saying it out loud, and a lot of times they're like, reflecting back to living in their home country. They're reflecting back leaving. They're reflecting back how was the process when they first got to the United States, how they adapted to where they are now. Because I do ask them, like, okay, what are you up to now? And a lot of them, have their own businesses or have their own podcasts and things like that. So then we talk about that. And, a lot of tears are shed while recording because there's a lot of emotions and memories and things that come up. And I feel like God really did give me the gift of compassion and empathy to be able to provide that safe space for them to open up and me to hold space for them. Also, going through my own therapy journey really helps as well, to provide that safe space for them. But yeah, it's sometimes it's just been really hard, but I am so grateful that a lot of people are still saying yes to sharing their immigration story. I've had a few no's. I've had a few people say that they are not ready to share or they're scared. And I'm like, I understand completely. So whenever you're ready, I'll be here. But a lot of people, I think, with a lot of things that's been going on, with a lot of the misinformation, with a lot of the false narrative that's been out there, people have been wanting to be like, okay, no, this is my story. This is how this happened for me. And again, like you said earlier, it is very unique for everyone because the reasons that they come are different, the countries that they come are different, so they have different cultures and different traditions and different religion. And but the immigration experience, the emotional aspect of it, of like experiencing a culture shock, adapting to the American culture, learning English, all of that is the same. All of that is the same no matter where they come from, but the stories within self, the experience is different. I, for example, I interviewed this she's from Mexico, and she came, she was 2 years old. Her family came through the border, and at 17 years old, she had to self-deport back to Mexico, and she went through that whole story, that whole journey as a young 17-year-old child. And because of everything that's going on, that empowered her to share her story. And so I remember seeing on threads that she was like seeking podcast to share her immigration story, and like multiple people tagged me like, oh, you had to be on her podcast. And I was like, oh, I appreciate it so much. And now she started her own podcast. So it's just like she went from being a guest and feeling empowered to share her immigration story to like now she's starting her own podcast and sharing other people's stories. And just seeing that and staying connected with my guest and seeing that full circle moments just make it all worth it. But I've also have been invited to talk about immigration on like different groups, virtually, in person. I went on a border trip earlier this year, in January of 2025. I went on the border trip with two organizations. One is already in Texas. We went to El Paso, Texas, and Mexico, and Juarez. And so that organization is called Ibarra. And then we flew over there with the other organization called We Choose Welcome. They're both Christian organizations, and they both work on sharing biblical truths of immigration, right? Like, so like the biblical perspectives of immigration. And as a person of faith, I love the work that they're doing. And so I had learned about these border trips, and I went in the beginning of January, which was a crazy time to go because we literally went the week after the new administration was sworn in. So everything was literally experienced like right then and there. So, for example, one of the things that we on this border trip, we went to a migrant shelter in Mexico to go, talk with refugees, with asylum seekers, and immigrants who were trying to seek asylum here in the United States from various different countries. And a lot of them were trying to get appointments through the CPB1 app, which was put into place by the previous administration. And it was a way that they could get an appointment with an immigration with an immigration judge to petition their case for asylum. And literally the week we went the week after the new administration was sworn. So literally the app was taken away. So it was like 30,000 appointments were just canceled in an instant. And so a lot of the migrants that we met, they were trying to come up with a plan B because they were literally waiting months to get an appointment, and the app was gone. And so a lot of them were like, we don't know what to do. This was the option that we had for now. And so, yeah, so it was just like crazy to see the changes happening and seeing the people that it affected in real time. The other thing that we saw was when we were crossing back from Mexico into the United States, we were crossing the bridge right before we had to give our passport to the guards. We saw on the right hand side, we saw like 3 white vans, and we also saw a heavy presence of the Mexican National Guard, which we asked one of the leaders, were like, is this normal that there's so much the National Guard is so present at the border? And they were like, no, they are actually waiting for deportees from the United States. So the van that we saw on the right hand side, like they were filled with people who had just gotten deported from the US. And I just felt this sense of rage at that moment. And I was just like, man, what a time to come down on this trip. I mean, I know God's timing is, everything, but it just was so much emotions. Again, as a person who was very empathetic and very compassionate, like I really, really feel a lot. So yeah, it was very, very emotional to see that there were people already, getting deported and things like that, and being affected by the administration so quickly. But yeah, it's been a year. It's been a year. I will say that.
Someone reminded me, they're like, yeah, we're just about not even a full year into this. I'm like, oh my God. It's not even been
It's
a
been
whole
the
year.
longest short. Yeah, it's been like the longest shortest year ever. Like I can't fathom, because there's been so much that has happened, but then I feel like December came so fast that I'm like, it doesn't feel like the holidays to me. Like
No,
it's so weird.
no, I'm in
Hmm.
the same boat. I'm like, well, it's not Christmas in a couple weeks. They can't
Yeah.
be because it's literally summer just ended. What are we talking about? Um,
Yes.
Yeah, it is. And then I'm like, oh my God, we're only 1 year into this. Holy cow.
Hmm.
Wow. Strap in, folks. But yeah, I mean, those of us who pay attention, even a little bit, like,
Hmm.
there is nothing that is happening that is or should be surprising. Like, literally, this
Yeah.
is what this administration ran on. This is like, if
Hmm.
you just even look at Project 2025, none of this should have been a surprise to
Hmm.
anybody. So,
Yeah.
um, it's unfortunately one of those things where I'm just like, I don't, why y'all acting surprised? Like, I'm be mad and
Hmm.
like do something, but don't be surprised. Like, you can't be surprised at this point.
Yeah,
Um,
I am no longer surprised. Honestly,
no,
surprised, no longer surprised. Angry, yes, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Brokenhearted and sad, for
yeah.
sure, but I am no longer surprised. Hmm.
I'm so glad that you brought up when you were talking about your guests, because I was thinking in my mind, like, are people, like, I'm not going to share my story. Like, eh, I'm nervous, I'm scared, I'm hesitant,
Hmm.
I'm this. Or they're like, no, you got to hear my story. Like, everybody needs to hear this story. And I'm so glad you brought up. It's like kind of a mixture of both, a little bit of both that you're
Make sure,
getting.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things is, since I am so many months out, I had a guest who was undocumented for a portion of her years here in the United States. And when we recorded, she shared that. And when her episode was going to be released, it was after the administration was sworn in. And so when I reached out to her to let her know, like, hey, your episode is coming up, she actually was like, how much did I talk about being undocumented? And I was like, well, I got to check when I edit um to see. And yeah, when I was re-listening to her episode, I told her, like, yeah, it's a big chunk of the episode. She was like, would you be upset if you remove that? And I was like, absolutely not, I will remove that for you, of course, 100%. I mean, she's a citizen now, no worries, but I understand completely. And I really, really handle these stories very carefully, because I'll see online, like, I know that you don't do questions beforehand because you want to do conversation, which is perfectly fine, but I don't have the luxury of doing that.
Sure.
My guests, I want them to know exactly
Hmm.
what we're going to talk about, and I want
Yeah.
them to let me know if anything is off topic, because I I have to handle these questions very carefully, because one, I am not in this to spin gain political points or spin an agenda or a narrative. I'm sharing people's stories.
Yeah.
And two, I can't force someone to share something that they're not comfortable with. Like, as a podcaster, you
Yeah.
just can't. And so I send questions out to my guests for them to review and approve. I've had guests tell me, I don't want to talk about the reason why I had to come to the United States. Perfectly
Hmm.
fine. We won't touch about that. And honestly, like, you can listen to certain episodes and the guests could be undocumented. They could be a citizen. They could, and you will never know,
Yeah.
because that's, to me, that's not Important. Now, I will say disclaimer: I am not advocating for people to break the laws. No,
No.
it's crazy
No,
that
no.
like I'm at this point now that I have to put that disclaimer out there because they're like, oh, you're an immigration advocate and blah blah blah. So like, people have to come the in the proper channels in the legal way. I'm like, yes, they do. They 100% do. I'm not
Yeah,
here
would
to
not
advocate for
recommend.
people to break the law. Like, no, I am not here to
Right.
advocate for people to break. But I do understand the immigration process. I do understand how complex it is. I do understand that unfortunately some people come in desperation because of what's going
Yeah.
on in their home country, which quote unquote a lot of times the USA has a lot to do with that, but that's a whole nother subject.
Oof.
But I understand,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I'm definitely not advocating for people to break the law, not at all. But I am just here to share people's stories. I am here
Hmm.
to, um, let them be comfortable with sharing the details that they want to share. And if I had one guest, well, this was in the very very beginning. I'll be honest, because she was actually still in the immigration process. She pulled her episode completely. So when it was time for me to reach out to her and be like, hey, like your episode is coming out, she was like, actually, I'm not comfortable anymore with the episode being released because she still had not finished. She was still in the process of getting her paperwork together. So I was like, oh yeah, for sure, I understand, no worries. And yeah, so yeah, I'm very careful with how I handle these stories. I want people to be comfortable, and I want people to know the truth. Like our immigration system is so outdated, is
Hmm.
so complicated. I mean, if you think about it, what drives people to break the law? It's usually desperation.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're trying to like get food for your children or whatever. So like you're in a dire situation where you're desperate, and desperation is what drives people to make certain choices. So it's like
Hmm.
before we judge people as to like, oh, why did they cross the border or why did they come undocumented, it's like listen to their story. Like
Yeah.
what, instead of asking like what drove that person to 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 do that. I am 100% certain that like if we were living in a perfect world, right, and people were not in dire situations, like no one would be undocumented in the United States. I 100%. But there's just so many layers to this, so many complexities that I don't know. I just feel like we're missing that compassionate side of things, which is again why I started the podcast, is to share the stories and not get into the politics of it, because I was like that's messy
Yeah.
and dehumanizing, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
these are humans, you guys. These are people with feelings and families and children and okay, sorry, I just went on a rant.
No, no, don't apologize. I think it's so important because it's so easy for a lot of people who, are born here, their ancestry line, as far as they can remember, has been here. You know what I mean? And I'm
Hmm.
mostly talking about not indigenous folks at all.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
folks who came over here. And stuff like that. And folks who are like, I don't know where my family's from. Like for me, my family is so all over the place. Like my family's not
Hmm.
just from like one country, right? We're
Yeah.
from a little bit of
Yeah.
all over the place, right? And so,
Yeah.
so for me, like, and for a lot of people who look like me, right? Are like, it's very easy to fall into talking points when you don't know
Hmm.
anyone who's an immigrant, when you have never heard
Yeah.
an immigrant story. It's so easy to be like, well, why don't they just come here the right
Hmm.
way, quote unquote? And it's like,
Hmm.
if you even understood like the process
Hmm.
to quote unquote come here the
Yes.
right way, um, and even now, right? Like people who are going through the process, doing all of the steps that we are asking them to
Oh
do,
my god.
are still right, are still facing this. And so I was just talking with a friend of mine, and I'm a firm believer in this, is like the way to reduce hatred is to increase the diversity of people you surround yourself with. And it's
A
always
hundred
been
percent.
like, it's so hard to hate groups of people if you know people from those groups, right? It's like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
hold up,
Because
right?
it's that fear. It's all about the
Yeah.
fear of the unknown is what they don't
Yeah.
know. And oh my gosh, you said so much. The people who say that they don't know where their family's from, or maybe their great grandparents came on Ellis Island, and at
Yeah.
that time, the process literally took 6 hours. They literally
Yeah.
came through New York, through the
Yep.
Ellis Island, and they processed them in 6 hours. It
Mm-hmm.
takes years now for that.
Years.
So it's like that process no longer exists. So for people to say like, oh, why don't they quote unquote come the right way? Well, a lot of processes change, and it's so a lot of times depending, like on when the my guests came, like the way that they came or that the way that they got their paperwork like may no longer be available. So like
Right.
for example, I mean, DACA is not a pathway to citizenship. It was supposed to be a temporary protective status for children who were
Mm-hmm.
brought in undocumented through their parents. And like DACA was put into place in 2012, but it's like now the current administration just like you can't no longer apply for that, right? So like that process is not available. For example, there was a process that Clinton back in the 90s put into place. That's no longer available. Ronald Reagan did an embassy for certain people who came at a certain time. That's no longer available. Like, there's just so many nuances and so many different things that have been within our history that, quote unquote, are no longer available. And there's also this common thinking that it's so easy to, quote unquote, do it the right way, or that it's quick, it's cheap, and that it's fat. Like, it's not. It's the complete opposite. It's a lot of money. It's so time consuming. And, you need to hire your own immigration attorney. Like, you don't get an immigration attorney appointed to you. And there's a lot of immigration attorneys out there that commit fraud themselves. So it's like they steal, or like they'll pose as immigration attorneys and they're not really. And so they steal money from people. And it's just really, really heartbreaking to get to hear about that, to hear people preying on vulnerable people and taking advantage of them. So it's just like it's a really complicated process that, unless, again, like you said, unless you know an immigrant or know someone who's gone through the process, like you don't understand. So like you hear all these talking points online, and it's like, no. I just saw a thread on Sunday, and it made my blood boil because there's a current travel ban for 19 countries, and they are also reevaluating asylum cases from those 19 countries. And there was immigrants they were waiting in line to get into their swear-in ceremony to become citizens. And the officers came and asked people if they were from part of those 19 countries, and if they were not allowed to get into their swear-in ceremony to become a citizen. So think about this. They went through the process of paying all the fees to become a citizen. They did they did the interviews, they did the appointments, they did the physical that you need to do. They did the paperwork. They waited the years, because you have to wait from the time you get your permanent residency card to when you can apply to become a citizen. You have to wait a few years. So they waited. They did it the right way. And right when they're at the finish line to get sworn in to be a citizen, they're told no. And so I saw this thread of this lady. She just had gotten sworn in on Friday. And she was like, I am so excited to share that I become a citizen. If you go through the legal channels, you have nothing to fear. And something else, like I can't even remember, but she made that comment about going through the legal channels. You have nothing to worry about, blah, blah, blah. And so I commented and I was like, congratulations, because I know the process is hard. I know that it's a lot of work. But you say that if you come through the legal channel, if you use the legal channels, you have nothing to fear. What would you say to those who were waiting in line to get sworn in, but because they came from certain countries, they got told no, that they couldn't be sworn in to be citizens? Like, what would you say to that, to those people? Did they not do it through the legal proper channels like you did? Like, it literally made me so upset because I don't think anything makes me more mad than immigrant hypocrites themselves, because there's a lot of them out there too.
Well,
Like immigrants themselves who are anti-immigration. Oh, I can't. No.
the people
Like
who like
no.
climb the ladder and then just kick it, when they get to
Oh,
the top. Like, are you
yes.
what? What?
Yes. Mhm.
Oh, you are a special human.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
it takes
Yes.
how and what? Like I will not. I'm the same way. I'm like I will never understand in any like community. Like you got what you wanted and what you wanted to
Yeah.
benefit, and then but nobody else can get it too. Like what? Oh,
Yeah.
well, how does that mindset happen? That is wild to me.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Yeah.
you bring up such a good point, like doing it the legal way, and it's like, I what? Then explain that to people who are like leaving their immigration court dates and their court appointments or coming in and being
And
snatched up by
yep.
ICE. Like what?
Yep. And getting
Come on,
deported. Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
I yeah, it's so wild. There's and things are changing all the time, and it's important for folks to understand like that's intentional, like
Oh yeah.
that to confuse us, to make us wonder like wait, what visas or what countries or what this that and the other thing are being impacted. um and say whatever you want about the administration, but the constant confusion, the putting information out as if it is a law right now. Like an executive order is not, it's not written
It's
into
not a
law.
law.
It's not a law.
Yes.
And so, but it's scary, right? Because it's coming from the president
Hmm.
and it's coming as an executive order, and it's like it's being stated as this is what it is now. And so people
Hmm.
scramble, people freak out. I've been watching it happen in my own circle of folks who are here
Yeah.
on a variety of different visas and immigration statuses and things like that. It's super super scary.
Yeah.
These are people who are trying to really do it the right way, but I think it's important what you said is people coming here, however they're coming here, um, it's a process. It's a very lengthy process. It's a very expensive process. No human being, I have to imagine, I don't want to generalize all people. I would find
Hmm.
it very hard to believe that somebody uproots their entire life, their entire culture, their entire everything that they know to go to another country in hopes that that will be a better life for them. Um, for the funsies of it, for no reason. Like nobody wakes
Yeah.
up one
Yeah.
day and goes,
Yeah.
you know what? Today, screw it. I quit my job. Peace out,
Yeah.
family. Bye. Love y'all.
Mhm.
I'm moving to this totally different country, culture, language, religion, whatever it
Mhm.
is, right? Like I'm leaving all of that just for fun. Let me see how it goes. No,
No,
there
no
it's like
one does.
nobody's doing it right. I'm glad we
And
agree on that.
yeah, and to say also like I don't think, I mean, there's obviously bad people
Sure.
everywhere, but the numbers show that immigrants have a lower rate of criminal activities than people born here in the United States.
Yeah.
And I think is because of the process that they go through to come here that they appreciate the opportunity to be here more. Like they don't want to screw that up. Like,
No.
so for example, I know someone who is still in their asylum case process, and I had asked them to give me a ride to an appointment,
Hmm.
and they were going the speed limit, and I was like, why are they driving so slow? Like,
Like, hello.
yeah, but that's such a
Right.
privileged thinking because I'm
Right.
a citizen, but they can't even risk getting a speeding ticket. You know what I mean? Like they can't
Yeah.
risk doing anything because their asylum case is still processing. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like they don't want to risk that. Now, I'm not saying that like there can't be like one or two people who may have, you know, bad intentions of coming to the United States to
for sure.
harm, right, like that. But the majority of immigrants who are either forced to come or choose to come, they're coming because of the opportunity. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I interview them. A lot of them um tend to come for schools, for schooling,
Hmm.
right? They'll come for a higher education, and their intention is to get the education and go back home.
Hmm.
However, the time here, where however long it takes them to do their education, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, or whatever, things happen. They find someone, they fall in love, and then they decide to stay, or they find a job that provides a better opportunity for them than, you know, their home country. But a lot of times they're coming for school, right, with the intention
Hmm.
of going back, but then things happen when they're here, and then
Yeah.
they end up staying, and they're able to stay because they either got married or they found a job and the job sponsors them and things like that. Or they come and they realize like, hey, you know, there are way more opportunities in the United States that there are in their home country, and they want a better life for themselves. So it's just like, it's the opportunities
Hmm.
that this country provides, that other countries don't. And I just wish more people understood that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, all of that. It's it's so important for folks to really understand that. It's so funny. I was just telling my spouse, like, I take my daughter to daycare, and her daycare is like borderline, fairly close-ish to some rural areas, some farmer areas, and things like that. There's a lot of migrant workers. And so I have been seeing an increase of border control, ICE, and things like that. And so for me, I'm looking up like, you know, what do I legally need to show? How can I legally stay within the bounds of asking questions? And
Yeah.
not because I'm gonna, not that I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna get pulled over and I have to worry. But for me, I'm like, how can I annoy them as much as I legally can? As a white woman,
Mm-hmm.
how can I ask so many probing questions? Because if they're spending time with me, they're not spending time elsewhere, doing things that they don't need to be
Look
doing
at
in the communities.
you
I'm
using
like,
your privilege.
listen, I told my spouse, and he's like, please don't get arrested. Please don't get in trouble. I'm like, no, no, no. No, that's why I was looking it up. I'm on ACLU, like, what documentation do I have to show? What do I not have to show? What do I have to say? What do I not have to say? And stuff like that. And like, we're the kind of people where like we have each other's numbers memorized because like we used to
Yeah.
back in the day before I was a mom a lot of protesting and stuff. I'm like, I am prepared. I know what I need to do. If I ever get arrested, I know what I have to do. Like my family's on standby. They already know. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. However, again, if they're taking time with me, that's time they're taking away from bothering people up in my community. So,
Mm.
I'm not about that life. So, he was like, you gotta be kidding me. But, I know people are looking up like, I'm undocumented or I look like I could be undocumented, right? Like, um,
Mm-hmm.
and having to think about that. And I'm like, how do I waste their time? How do I be a Karen? So I almost Googled that. And I was like, nah, let me not Google anything. Let me be strategic about how I Google
Yeah.
this. So,
Yeah.
no, I love all of that you have shared. One of the questions I love to ask all of my guests as we unfortunately wrap up, because I could talk to you all night. You're
Oh,
just amazing.
thank
Is
you.
a piece of advice that you have for the listeners? Any advice that you would like to part on to
Yeah.
listeners?
I would I would actually encourage, not an advice, I would encourage people to be just a little bit more curious. Ask questions. You know, you made a comment earlier that a lot of people are probably not surrounded by immigrants, so like they don't know the process. But I had a guest who she could pull off as a white American.
Mm-hmm.
And she had mentioned that, a lot of people don't ever question if she was born here or not. And it's like they may not think that they know an immigrant, but they probably do. They
Mm-hmm.
probably are surrounded by an immigrant. They just don't look like what in their mind they think an immigrant looks like. But I would just encourage people to be just a little bit more curious. Ask questions in a respectful manner, because you can learn a lot just from simple questions. If you hear an accent, instead of being scared, it's like, "How are you? Where are you from?"
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. Just that little curiosity. So yeah, I would encourage the listeners to do that, because immigrants are usually proud of where they came from. They're proud to be here, and I'm sure that they would love to share a little bit about their history or their traditions or their culture. Share a little bit of that with you. So that's an encouragement that I have for today.
I I love that. I love that. May we all be a little more curious of the folks that we meet in this world. I love that advice. As a reminder for folks, the name of your podcast, I'll put everything in the show notes, but name of your podcast, where folks can follow you, support you, and all the work
Yeah.
that you do.
Yeah, so The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants can be listened to on Apple, Spotify, or any podcast listening platforms, iHeartMedia, things like that. Or it can be watched on YouTube with the same name, The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants. They can support by listening, by subscribing, leaving a rating or a review. That actually goes really long ways. And yeah, and sharing. If you can share, listen to an episode, share it with a friend, that would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. A huge thank you, Heidi. You're amazing. You're just really great, and just thank you for the work that you do and for having a platform for folks to share their stories and
Thank
taking
you.
care of those stories in the way that you do. And I'm so glad that you do this work.
Thank you, Holly. Again, like I said before, I'm always so honored when people invite me on their space with their audience to share what I do, because it is a very hot topic right now, but it is also, not something that a lot of people like to talk about. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.